Glad you could join us. I'm so excited to welcome Michael Campbell tonight. Good morning to you in Utah, by the way. We're
Good morning.
approaching evening here on a very wet and windy day. But it's so exciting to connect this way, connect us all from many, many places. I know I've known you for ages. I love what you do with horses, and I could talk forever about you, but would you mind introducing yourself? I think you could do that better than I could.
Well, I'm myself. I'm just a guy that fell into obsessive research because of the things I saw going on around me, and things that didn't seem to be addressed well by the animal medical community and our medical community. And you start looking at the statistics, and you see you see there's a severe problem. So I just got involved, and I was involved in a product at the time, and I built a thing called performance horse stress management clinics around that, and went out on the road and ended up in front of a lot of people and in a lot of corrals, and learned a lot of things about horses that I kind of didn't know. And because I didn't realize the problem, what was really an underlying problem, that it wasn't addressed. So now I've done several thousand hours of research around that problem, and here we are.
Well, experience speaks very loud, doesn't it?
I was born and raised in Wyoming on a ranch, and came up with a lot of horses when I was young. Went away from that for a lot of years. I've been a jeweler for 45 years, but I've always been around the horse people, the ranch people, and all my friends are horse people. And so, I speak that language. I know how to look into that world. And so that's where I got.
Well, your expertise with horses, in both treatment and prevention is quite extensive. Could we look at, when you're looking at an issue, do you sort of distill back and look at what's the cause of this issue? Would that be a good place to start?
Well, it's probably, I would say it's a predominant cofactor of all health in horses and people, because it's chartable, and we've charted all of it. And we can tell from the beginning of the introduction of glyphosate in 1974. Actually, it came into existence in 1969. It was once patented as an antibiotic by Monsanto. And so it became a part of the deal. And then as every year went up, the use of it increased year by year by year. And then when they got to 1994 or 1990, I think 94, 95, 94, they came with Roundup Ready crops. And basically, when you put glyphosate in a crop or a plant, you give that plant AIDS. And the worst thing it does is that it chelates the minerals out of the plant. And we know that because, we know that for a lot of reasons. We know it works as a chelator, but if you weigh a bushel of regular corn, it weighs 56 pounds. If you weigh a bushel of Roundup Ready corn, it weighs 54 pounds, because it's chelated 2 pounds of the minerals out of it. And that's a lot of minerals. And so we're not getting, of course, we know that our intake of food is lacking of minerals and fiber, from 100 years ago by way more than 50%, and, a lot of things, 90%. So, so it's created, if you've charted all the diseases, and which Stephanie Seneff and another doctor friend of hers did in charts, they have a 99% correlation rate with glyphosate. So that it's interacting in all metabolic processes, and not all metabolic processes, but many of the protein processes. And so we've created, we have the sickest, My favorite, well, it's not my favorite, it's my most unfavorite, but one of the most telling statistics is in 1960 in America, 4.5% of America had a chronic diagnosable disease. And now we're in 2019, the CDC published that 52% of children under the age of 18 have a diagnosable disease. Now, somewhere here, we've done something real wrong. And I mean, we've upped the vaccine rate, the amount of vaccines. That's one of the things we've done. We've increased the synthetics and chemicals in food. And, you know, I mean, it's all related to environmental issues. Now we're at a point, I think, that it's almost a tipping point. We either change this and turn this around, or we continue to slide, and we're going to slide right into extinction if we're not careful here, because we're at a point where only 12% at max, and that was in 2016, is metabolically healthy of the people. And horses, you know, we didn't used to see Cushing's disease in horses that much. I mean, you would once in a while see it a little bit, but now the University of Kentucky published a thing that said 50% of the horses over 15 will have some level of Cushing's disease. So, you know, that's a endocrine problem, and that's the pineal gland, and that's the fulcrum point of a horse is the pineal gland. I mean, it just about handles everything, but not everything, but a lot of processes. And so here we are with this huge problem, and it's in a big part of it's glyphosate. And the crazy thing about glyphosate is that it's I call it the ghost molecule that destroyed the world, and the world didn't even know it. I mean, it could take the world out, and you know, I mean, they've covered it up so good, and you hardly hear anything about it. I mean, you heard these what you call it, these big lawsuits they had in California, and they, you know, on cancer and glyphosate, but that's just a corner of what glyphosate really does to the body. Cancer, I mean, you got to get to the cancer point, you'll get there, but it takes a long time, and all of these other processes are daily. I mean, that's why half the country, more than half of our country, has leaky guts, and it's because of glyphosate.
So do horses have leaky gut then?
Horses especially have leaky. Well, they have, you know, the racehorses. 90% of the racehorses have ulcers, or probably all the racehorses have ulcers, and it's because, of course, of stress and glyphosate. It breaks down the digestive. The microbiome. I mean, it's a constant stress on the microbiome, and then it gets deeper than that. I mean, that's why these horses, they've euthanized all these horses on the they're euthanizing 10 horses almost a week on the racetrack, you know, and it's because they're young. They're too young, for one thing. They're running them too young, but the other thing is it's weakening all of their ligaments and their, you know, and their collagen and tensile strength in their ligaments. And so there's a huge problem. And, you know, they get lame, and once a horse is lame, you know, he's only on 4 sticks. 1 stick's lame, he's no good anymore. They euthanize him. So it's a sad deal.
So these horses are exposed to glyphosate through their feed?
Well, there's a lot of things goes on at the track. We spend a lot of time at the track, and just about all the feed has glyphosate in it. You have to work real hard to find feed that doesn't. They like to feed them alfalfa. Almost all the alfalfa is Roundup ready. It's a hot feed. It's in a high energy feed, so they like alfalfa. They feed them mostly alfalfa. And if they're smart, they mix in good grass, because grass contains all the minerals that a horse needs if it's good grass. But, you know, I lost my track here. The glyphosate in the feed, yes, in the feed. And the other thing is there's some chemicals they use, some drugs and different things that they use. Lasix is one of it's called furosemide, is Lasix, and clenbuterol. They do that a lot because those horses tend to have a little bit of respiratory illness. And then if you mix glyphosate and the nitrates in the feed and the heavy metals and all these things together, you know, they become synergistically toxic.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, they work together. They come together, and they you know, glyphosate enhances the toxicity of other things. So
And that's not widely known, is
it
it? Hmm.
it integrates with the biomolecule, you know, the biomolecules of biology, and it just becomes a problem. It's a problem in everybody. It's a problem in all living organisms, including aquaculture and the soil. So it's a huge problem.
So how can a
And
horse owner avoid that?
Excuse me?
How could a horse owner identify sources of glyphosate or avoid them? Anything other than feed?
Well, you know, they don't want to be spraying all the weeds around where the horses are with glyphosate or with Roundup or whatever. It's got glyphosate in it. There's other ones now that have glyphosate because Monsanto doesn't have the patent anymore. So it's in a lot of things. But yeah, you got to keep them away from that. You got to try to find feed that doesn't have glyphosate in it. I'm not in love with some of the, because of the heavy metals that come about from some of the vaccines and stuff, you know, keep as light on the vaccines as possible. And if you're doing city water and it's got fluoride in it, figure out a way to filter it so there's no fluoride, or find fluoride-free water, because fluoride it interacts with it all. And that's just another problem. And if you've got horses where there's bad air and lots of particulates in the air, horses are really, because they've got big old lungs and they are really sensitive to it. Like in California, in Norco, California, there's 25,000 horses there. They claim there's 40,000 people and 25,000 horses. Well, just about. I was there a couple of times. We did clinics there 2 or 3 times, and most of those horses are sick, I have to tell you.
So what sort of symptoms would they see? How would they suspect glyphosate?
Everything you can imagine that could be wrong with a horse, you can find there. I'm telling you, they're just weakened. Their immune systems are weakened, and they, you know, anything you could think of that a horse could have. And the other bad thing is all the land there is sand. And so there's a lot of sand impaction because they've got, you know, they're in a little old pen, 40 by 60, or they're maybe got an 1/8 of an acre or 1/4 of an acre, or if they're lucky, they have an acre. But, you know, they get bored and they tend to you know, nibble on the sand, and then they end up with sand impaction. It's one thing in every community of horses, you know, there's always different problems, but and like humans, horses have, because of their environment, they have a different bio makeup, you know. I mean, everyone's different in every area. So when you go some places, like I went in West Texas, there was these ladies complaining about their horses' lungs bleeding, and you know, you could smell that oil in West Texas, a lot of oil wells. You could smell that oil gas. I said, that's your problem. These horses don't like that oil gas. It's hurting their lungs, and that's why they're bleeding so bad.
And they can't tell you.
And they didn't even know that. They didn't even think of that, because they were born and raised in that oil world, and they just think it's part of their deal, you know. But it's destroying their horses, you know.
Well, should we see if anyone has any questions now, Michael? Sounds like we could maybe have a couple more sessions another time and really open this up. But let's see if anyone has any questions.
Absolutely.
Stella looks like she does.
Oh, so Michael, do you think, I mean, I'm in the UK, so it doesn't seem to be quite so prevalent, the use of glyphosate. I mean, we do use Roundup, but I don't know that, maybe I'm just being naive, but it just seems to be more of a problem in the States than over here in the UK, or maybe we just haven't caught on to the same extent. So do you think the problem's the same, or do you think that we at the moment in the UK aren't quite where you are in the States?
It might be a little bit different in the UK. you know, I mean, there's still a lot of Roundup Ready crops used there. I mean, all the rapeseed is Roundup Ready.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's this, we know this veterinarian, I can't think of her, what's her name?
Was it
Carly.
Carly?
Yeah, she was where was she at? She was at one of the big colleges there, or one of the big
She's up north. I don't know if it's Manchester. Yeah, I've spoken to her.
Anyway, she realized that her horses were being affected by glyphosate, and she developed a whole line of feed that didn't have glyphosate in it after she retired from her job. And so, I mean, it's prevalent. I mean, it's everywhere in the world. There's hardly a place in the world that it isn't very prevalent. You know, most water, if you test it, will have some glyphosate in it, and it doesn't take much. Let me tell you, it only takes 2 parts per million to make a breast tumor grow. So, you know, it accumulates, and over time, if it's something like, if you're drinking anything, if you're drinking any regular sugar in this country, any regular sugar, just ordinary sugar, is all from sugar beets, and sugar beets are all Roundup Ready, and so it's full of glyphosate. Like all the pop here is full of glyphosate. Anything with corn syrup in it's full of, any corn derivative or corn products, it's full of glyphosate. And if it comes from here or in a lot of places in the world and it comes to England and you're consuming it, you're getting glyphosate. So, and all the fast foods, I mean, most of the fast foods, it'd be hard to find fast food that doesn't have glyphosate in it, especially pizza and things like that, anything with flour.
So glyphosate makes it cheaper to grow crops? Just makes it cheaper,
Well,
so the food's cheaper?
Well, that's what they claim, it makes it cheaper, but it doesn't. And the yields and the sustainability of the yields is not what they make it out to be. There's no sustainability in staying with Roundup Ready crops. You'll end up with less production in the end.
Well, fascinating topic, Michael. I think we need to come back for another session. Any more questions?
I just had a question myself. Maybe I'm naive as well, but how does a product like glyphosate get past the government authorities and, you know, those type of people?
Good question.
But
really
especially when they know that it causes such harm, etc. And yet they're ones that they regulate everything and regulate everybody. So how does it get past them?
Well, that's the terrible part of the whole thing right there. I mean, I could do 2 hours on that subject, but for all the years, if you track who was in charge at the FDA and the USDA and of all the agencies in America, you will find that the big pharma companies and chemical companies march their folks back and forth into those positions. And so whatever they want gets passed. And the science is, you know, the science is, there is no science, it's weak. And they've taken them to court over the science, but they still continue to do it because they have everybody under their control. And that's why I say it's the silent killer. It's the silent molecule that destroyed the world. And it could literally destroy our world. That one molecule, I mean, it's phenomenal, all the things it does and how it gets involved in all the metabolic processes. So, you know, but it's controlled, and it's well controlled. And they go, and all the countries that have tried, like Austria just passed a law to no more glyphosate. They didn't want it in their thing. Well, Monsanto sent in a ton of people to change that, and and they've almost got it changed back.
Oh, wow.
And so these people are powerful. I mean, they're beyond. So the only way you beat it is we, the people, have to just not, participate. The only way you beat it.
Well, that is true, and there are more of us than there are them. And I know several small communities here in the UK have banned glyphosate in municipal areas, and it takes that ground level effort to multiply. And at the moment, Monsanto's not going to be bothered about Glastonbury or Lyme Regis, but you get them in number, it'll be too much to take on, hopefully, in time.
Well, the other thing it's about educating people, because not many people, and myself included, understand what glyphosate does. But I was reading in relation to horses in for equine metabolic syndrome, which is diabetes in people, and also with the non-sweating. And I must have known it, but I think I forgot it, that glutathione is a triglyceride. And apparently glyphosate is similar in structure to glycine, which is one of the amino acids that make up glutathione. And so it then replaces the collagen, and then that weakens the connective tissue. So it's really a matter of educating people so that they understand the implications, you know, rather than it just being, oh, those sort of wacky, you know, activist type people wanting to ban something else because it's a big organization. But it's actually much more fundamental than that. You know, it affects all of us at individual level.
It is. 65 years ago, there were 8 autoimmunes. Today, there's like 115 or 118 of them. Some of them don't even have a name. And those have all been brought about by the environment and chemicals. And, you know, so, like you said, you're exactly right on everything you said there. The glyphosate blocks the, you know, blocks the production of glutathione, you know, messes up the production of glutathione. And glutathione is the master antioxidant, boy. And if you're messing with that baby, you're messing with everything. So there you go.
Great. Well, we're catching on, aren't we? We're catching on.
Well, we're getting smarter in this. The one good thing, the silver lining, there is no good thing, but there is a little bit of a silver lining from what we've gone through in the last 6 months. And that is we're getting a wake up call. People are starting to realize that, hey, wait a minute, an immune system actually means something. Me having a strong immune system might actually mean something. And so, and it's all about immune systems. It's all about our immune system, and it's all about our building that immune system and how we do it and what we our intake to be able to do that. And because if your immune system's weak, you know, one of these silly viruses can come along and take you right out. But if you have a strong immune system, it has to be a pretty bad virus to take you out. So it's important.
Well, and there's a lot we can do, you know, for our horses too. They're not susceptible to the virus, but they're susceptible to so much that can be easily remedied. I mean, fairly easily remedied. So let's have another session. Any more questions?
It's not a question, but I think going back to what I was saying about the UK, alfalfa isn't so much a go-to over here, whereas it is in the States. So I know people do buy it, and I have bought it myself. And actually, funnily enough, I didn't like it. I just, there was something about it I didn't like, and so I stopped feeding it to my horses. And I was only using it as to provide fiber for the feed, because normally I just feed pure grass, which is just basically dried, chopped up grass, as opposed to molly chaff, because usually molly chaff is full of sugar. So, but I just didn't like alfalfa, so I stopped feeding it. So it's not so readily available, and it's quite expensive to buy, you know, a bale of it. So hopefully we can avoid it slightly.
Well, on the ranch, my granddad, I was raised by my granddad, who was an Englishman. He came from England in 1918 or 1919. Him and his brothers came over here. And he never liked alfalfa. We never fed alfalfa. We always fed native hay to our horses, and we fed oats and native hay mostly if we fed him anything. But you know, it's a funny thing that if you take that analogy in Wyoming and Montana and places where they turn horses out, they turn them out in the winter. They don't feed them unless there becomes snow cover, and they eat dead grass, and that dead grass is full of the right minerals, and it keeps them healthy and alive. And they don't lose weight, you know, they stay the same. And those horses live quite a bit longer, probably 20, 30, 40% longer than the penned horses, or the horses that are in smaller areas and don't get turned out. So that old grass is powerful, boy. And that alfalfa really is just kind of an immediate energy. It's not that, it's really not good for horses, to tell you the truth. You're exactly right.
In a paddock, they have about 3 acres, and they have hedgerow all around, trees and stuff. And all summer they just do their own thing. You know, I don't give them extra hay, and I don't give them extra hay in the winter. They have hay when they come in at night, and I might give them a feed, but most of that is linseed. But they look good, and they eat, you know, the trees, they eat the hedgerow, they eat the wild garlic, and they know what they need, and they eat what they need. And so I think why my horses stay, you know, as well as they do, because I'm not giving them artificial stuff, and anything I do give them is as natural as I can possibly get it.
Yeah, no, you got it right. I mean, you know, but there's millions of horses that don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a problem.
Well, any more questions? Because we've gone on a good 25 minutes now, and we're trying to keep it short so we can come back and do this again. So any other questions before we close it out? Well, if you have any special interest and you'd like to put in the chat some topic that you'd like Michael to cover in the future, please enter it in the chat, or you can private message me later on. We think we'll do the next session on hoof health with a hoof expert from the US. So without any further, we'll just call this one a wrap. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you all for jumping on. Thank you, Michael, very much. I've always learned something. I learned even more tonight. So we'll see you again.
This is what we do now. So maybe it's turned out to be a good thing, because we can talk to a lot of people and we can get all, you know, interact. I think it's really positive.
It's the new way forward, and we'll keep spreading our message, and we'll be in touch next time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.